Hello, everyone. So the topic of discussion today is probability and odds. In this video, we will discuss everything about probability and odds, and also we'll see how to deal with the difficult questions regarding these topics. So let's start. Okay, so we have a question on board. An 80-year-old man, Joseph, presents with memory difficulties, scored 24 on MMSC. To diagnose dementia, let's suppose that the sensitivity and specificity of MMSC scores, which is 25, are 80% and 90% respectively. Also, you know that the prevalence of dementia is around 10% at the age of 80 years. Which of the following is correct regarding the probability that Joseph actually has dementia? So before moving further and before moving forward with this question, let's discuss some of the main topics. Okay, so as I mentioned before, in order to solve this question, we'll have to know some of the basic concepts like probability. What is probability? Probability is basically nothing but it is the number of times one event is happening divided by number of times of all the events happening. As you can see, for example here, that number of times getting heads divided by number of times doing toss. This is basically the definition of probability, and the formula is odds divided by 1 plus odds. So what is odds? Odds is basically it is the number of times getting heads divided by number of times getting tails. It is just like as we have discussed about the probability, that the probability is number of times or number of chances of one event happening divided by number of all the events happening. This is basically number of chances having one event happening divided by number of chances of having another event happening. As you can see here in the previous slide, that we discussed that it is number of times getting heads and number of times doing toss. On the other hand, if we talk about odds, it is number of times getting heads divided by number of times getting tails, like the other event. The formula is simple. It is probability divided by 1 minus probability. We'll have to remember these formulas, okay? Like the probability, the formula for probability and formula for odds. Moving on. We have two things. We have probability and odds, and we have pre-test probability and pre-test odds, and then post-test odds and post-test probability. What are pre-test probability? It is basically pre-test probability and odds. They are basically before applying the test, and the post-test odds is basically the odds and probabilities after applying a test. Let's first discuss what is pre-test probability. Whenever you solve these type of questions, which I showed you earlier, the pre-test probability, you should remember this thing always, that the pre-test probability is nothing but a prevalence. Okay. If we talk about the pre-test odds, they can also be calculated from the prevalence, which is nothing but a pre-test probability. Now we are talking about post-test odds and post-test probability. For post-test odds, the formula is likelihood ratio into pre-test odds. Okay. And what is the formula of likelihood ratio for the positive test? You already know that it is basically sensitivity divided by 1 minus specificity. We have discussed this formula in our previous videos. So to find out the post-test odds, you should have a likelihood ratio of the test and the pre-test odds. What are the pre-test odds? Pre-test odds are basically something that can be calculated from the pre-test probability, which is nothing but a prevalence. Moving on. Post-test probability. What is post-test probability? That is basically the last part of this list. And what is post-test probability? The formula is same as that of probability, that is odds divided by 1 plus odds, but it is obviously, if it is a post-test, then it is post-test odds divided by 1 plus post-test odds. Now, again, coming back to our question, we have this question and how to solve this question. How to solve this thing. See, what are they trying to ask? They are trying to ask which of the following is correct regarding the probability that Joseph actually has dementia. That means we have 80% sensitivity and 90% specificity of MMSC before applying the test. But after applying the test, what is the probability? That means they are asking about the post-test probability. Okay, to solve this question, let's just move on. We discussed that what is pre-test probability? It is equal to prevalence. Prevalence here is 10%, and if you just remove the percentage, it would be 0.1. So the prevalence would be 0.1, and this is your pre-test probability. If we talk about pre-test odds, you'll go systematically, okay, one by one. What is pre-test odds? As I told you, that it can also be calculated from the prevalence. So Remember what was the pretest probability? The pretest probability was 0.1. So we can calculate pretest odds from pretest probability. How? The formula for pretest odds would be pretest probability divided by 1 minus pretest probability. So the post-test odds is 0.11. Moving on. Now, as I mentioned before, to find out the post-test odds, we should have likelihood ratio and pre-test odds. We already have pre-test odds. Now we are left with finding likelihood ratio. How to find the likelihood ratio? The sensitivity and specificity has already been given. If you see the 80% and 90% respectively. So sensitivity is 0.8 after removing the percentages, and the sensitivity is specificity is 0.9, which is the formula is sensitivity divided by 1 minus specificity. The likelihood ratio we have is 8. Okay, so just put this 8 into the formula, and we know the pretest odds. What were the pretest odds? The pretest odds were 0.11. Just multiply 0.11 into 8. In this way, you will get post-test odds. Remember, they are not asking us to find out the post-test odds. They are asking us to find out the post-test probability. So once you have odds, then it is super easy to find out the probability. So we have post-test odds. As you can see here, we multiply the likelihood ratio, which we found, and the pretest odds, it is 0.88. So now as we have post-test odds, now let's find out the post-test probability. What is the post-test probability? It is basically post-test odds, which is 0.88 divided by 1 plus post-test odds, 1 plus 0.88. The answer we have is 0.46, which is basically what? Post-test probability. And this is our answer. So with this, I'm ending my today's lecture here. I hope you will find this video helpful. See you in next video. Thank you so much.